Cloudcast Media. Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and we are so pleased to have back in the studio a longtime friend and colleague of mine, Martin Kruming, journalist, law professor at San Diego State, law mass comm professor, I should say, lecturer, SDSU Journalism and Media Studies. How you doing there, Martin?
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Good to, and you got your colleague with you, Shaun Briley. He's the co-founder of Factly News. Can't wait to find out about that. And he's also the Coronado Library director for the city of Coronado. How you doing, Shaun?
Good, thank you.
Looking forward to finding all about Factly News, joined by my co-host, Kristen Fogel. She's the executive director of San Diego Writers, Inc. They're celebrating their 20th anniversary this year in Liberty Station. They've had a bunch of cool things going on in their anniversary year. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we keep adding things to the schedule and making my pile longer, and it's a good time the whole time.
It is all good. Okay, very good. I'll let you get us kicked off and chat with Shaun.
Yeah, let's just get right into what Factly News is all about and what it came out of.
Well, the issue that Factly News is trying to address is the issue of news deserts, which is pretty well publicized these days. But there's over 200 counties in the United States and over 1,300 communities that don't have any local news. They haven't got print, they haven't got online. And it's really a factor of the internet age. And, you know, that local news used to rely on classified advertising that just isn't there anymore. Mm-hmm. So you have these vast areas of America, and actually it's a problem in Europe and all over the world, where there's nobody keeping local government accountable. There's nobody watching the big business in town. People are running for elections, and the community don't know anything about them.
Yeah. So
it's a threat to democracy, really. And you know, all you have in these communities is national news and social media. So that's the problem. Mm-hmm. And you know, what we're trying to propose to address that is, you know, we've managed to map libraries in the country over a map of news deserts. And you know, there's libraries are taxpayer funded, mm-hmm. and there tends to be one in every medium-sized town. So you can actually map libraries over all of these news deserts. So then it was like, well, how do we make something work? And we did look into it. What people have tried a few things before. You know, people have tried to get a library to do a news paper through there, but it hasn't worked. You know, there's been some grant funding. The grant funding runs out, it peters out, or it kind of undermined the library. So librarians aren't journalists by and large. Mm-hmm. And but the real strength of the library is it's the public trust,
right,
which comes from the neutrality. So, you know, when you start to editorialize, you know, the library gets undermined and the whole project gets undermined. So, you know, we really crafted a project through experimentation, and we worked with government officers and other media. We met all kinds of media people. We met academics, you know, to go over this. What could you do using libraries to water the news deserts? I mean, you know, librarians are people that are trained to assess information. They're used to answering questions like, is something a fact or is it mm-hmm. fictional? They're used to digging through reference materials to come up with slightly deeper delve into things. So, you know, we've created a template of tasks that kind of mirror what a library would do in an ordinary sense, that would provide information in these areas. We're also looking at this idea of I don't know if you heard of is it ghost media, where it's not just that we have news deserts in America. There's the number of journalists working, period, has just plummeted. And even where there are existing newspapers, the level of coverage that is given has plummeted. So we've been partnering with some other media people in like Kansas and other parts of the country to try and develop a way for this to work in those areas, to partner with a local news organization. But the news desert piece relates to areas that don't have any media. There's no place to post your news. So we're trying to also provide a platform for that. And I could go. I'm sure we've got other questions, but we've developed an online presence. It pivots around education, which is something that libraries are deeply involved in. Citizen journalism, education, how to go out and find things for yourself, how to responsibly report that to other people. Media literacy, how to read what you're seeing and understand it and know fact and fiction.
Yeah.
But also providing that kind of fact or fiction service in an area, and providing a kind of watchdog service in an area where you can, help people get past that 800 number for that big business, agribusiness or whatever in their area, and find out how to contact a ombudsman or a watchdog, or how to complain about your local sheriff, all that kind of stuff. And we know that libraries in these areas are limited. They tend to be rural areas, and so we're not coming up. We've geared the project to operate in that type of environment. So the idea is that you would provide remote support for them through a page where they would be the link into the community, and they would train people to provide content for this page through the citizen journalism training that you do there. But we might work with journalism students to get it rolling, to populate the pages initially, and people would go through the site to get the educational piece.
Martin, is that how you got involved, through students getting involved, or are you passionate about the issue? Tell me about how you got involved.
I got involved because I've been a journalist. I was a journalist with newspapers, and I was a journalist with Associated Press. And Shaun and I have been working together for several years on other projects too. The alarm for me was seeing a study by a woman named Penny Abernathy. Penny is a retired professor emeritus at the University of North Carolina journalism program, and is now at Medill in Northwestern. And if you go to her website, and she's done extensive research on this, you can look and see across the country of the newspapers that are going out of business. And that set off alarms for me. And I said, Shaun and I were kicking around this several years ago. And for me, that's a shame. Yeah. And I think it's more than a shame. It's, as we talk about, it's a real slap at democracy. So we started formulating a game plan. And the game plan was the library, as Shaun has indicated, is the center of our piece. And then putting together retired journalists, journalism students, concerned citizens who want to write across the country. And then we looked at where are our test sites? Does this thing work? Yeah. And we spent a lot of time in places like Utah. But libraries in small towns across America have so much to do. So we focus then on Kansas, West Virginia, and San Diego County. And we said, if we can do a test site in one of these with journalism students, retired journalists, concerned citizens, maybe we've got something here. But again, the library is the key to this.
Yeah. We're chatting with Martin Kruming, lecturer at San Diego State University Journalism and Media Studies, joined by his colleague Shaun Briley, co-founder of Faculty News and the Coronado Library director. I'm Drew Schlosberg. You're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest running community podcast, now in our 18th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union for 6 decades, just doing great things in San Diego County, joined by my co-host Kristen Fogel of San Diego Writers Inc. It's interesting about this, what you're saying. And of course, Martin, you and I worked in the field of journalism when I first started. I started consulting for San Diego Union Tribune in 1985, as you know, but then got hired in 92. There were 2,200 people working for the Union Tribune. There's maybe, I'm not sure, 90% of those folks are gone, if not even more on that. And of course, and Shaun, you're a former journalist, and there was always a bunch of folks in there, those copy editors and your own editor and the section editor checking your work 75 times over and all that business. In this new world of news deserts and faculty and all this, and yes, you'll get journalism students, but they're students. Some maybe great writers and all that, and some former journalists, they have the chops, or citizen journalists. Where is the checkoff to say, okay, what you're writing is actually, worth publishing because it's gone through the fact check process?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. So, as you've described it somewhat there, things have pushed out into the community. You have citizens doing it. Now, you can do it in an organized manner with a little bit of vetting, which is what we're trying to do, or you can just leave it for the Wild West of social media, which is kind of what's happening in these areas. So the idea is that these, ultimately we want the libraries to take a responsibility to do fact-checking. So if you say, nobody in this county voted Democrat, for instance, and then they say, well, actually 46% voted. They just do the fact without their editorial piece, as you would at a reference desk. I think that's something we could get them to step up and do that kind of vetting. But you have a very good point, and this is why there will be a center, and it's really here in San Diego with us, where somebody is going to be looking at these pages and doing a check on, are they keeping true to the mission of the project? Are we seeing, a lot of editorializing happening and so on? So the idea is to not just create a template and push it out there, good luck, but to have a kind of screening process.
Right, exactly. So, Martin, I know you had just come back from, the Society of Weekly Newspaper Editors conference in Toronto, correct?
Correct.
How is that being embraced by our world, like the Society of Newspaper Editors?
This is the International Society of Weekly Newspaper Editors, and I think the news desert issue is beyond the United States. It's a global issue.
Yeah, Shaun was saying, right.
The way it's being interpreted by the International Society of Weekly Newspaper Editors, ISNWE, and they go back and forth on how to pronounce that. But the concern is that they're going out of business. And these small papers that have been in communities across America for years.
150 years, if more.
Yeah.
Right.
So where is their salvation? Because they're dropping very quickly, and they're concerned about it. Some of them have incorporated going online with their publications. Others are still continuing the print product. No one sees an easy answer to this. And so in discussions with several of them in Toronto, they're very open. And one of their members is a journalism professor at Kansas State University and oversees community journalism. And those are the type of people we want to partner with.
Right.
And we've already contacted them. And Sam, who is the professor at Kansas State, is very involved, very well connected. And what we're looking for, as I said before, are the test sites.
Right.
So
we'll come back from break. I want to, ask you, Martin, and you can jump in on this as well. Shaun has SDSU's Journalism and Media Studies division embrace this. You and I are very close to it. You teach in that area. And then what can we do? Think about this too, Shaun, with our readers to really try to ramp up what you're doing. There is nothing more important, than having a democracy that has actually journalists that can cover stuff, to say the least. And how do we get the young folks that are engaged in this, and do they realize how important this is to do? When we return, chatting with Shaun Briley, co-founder of Faculty News and the Coronado Library director, joined by his colleague Martin Kruming, a lecturer at SDSU Journalism and Media Studies, former journalist, editor of the Daily Transcript, a media lawyer, joined by my colleague Kristen Fogel from San Diego Writers Inc. I'm Drew Schlosberg. Listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union for 6 decades, doing great things for folks living in San Diego County. We will be right back.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. You're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest running community podcast, now in our 18th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, broadcasting in these Mission Fed, very cool studio here in Scripps Ranch. Mission Fed for more than 60 years, been doing great things in San Diego County. Joined by Shaun Briley, co-founder of Faculty News, who's also the library director in Coronado, joined by his colleague Martin Kruming, lecturer at SDSU Journalism and Media Studies, and my colleague and co-host Kristen Fogel, the executive director of San Diego Writers Inc. So Martin, I'll start with you on this, and then pivot over to Shaun. Is SDSU embracing this?
SDSU is embracing it in the sense that Temple Northrup, who's the director of the JMS, Journalism and Media Studies, is very supportive of this. I think what we have been focusing on primarily is the library and building the model.
Right.
And then going to organizations like the International Society of Weekly Newspaper Editors, San Diego State, JMS, and others, and saying, come aboard with this. But the initial conversations, discussions with Temple have been very positive. In terms of young people, I think you raise a very interesting issue regarding this, because young people, as we all know, are not reading print media. If anything, they're getting their news from social media. And that may or may not be true in various areas. But what I found at San Diego State, that very few want to go into print media, but very many want to go into the news in some form. And so on another project I'm working on, we're testing whether we can use young people to put out an international journal. And the answer is yes.
Well, if you don't mind swinging over the microphone over to Brandon Joe, our producer. Why don't you grab the microphone over there, Brandon? Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Brandon. So you're a young person. You're going to be entering as a junior at UCSD. Obviously, you're very focused on community outreach and so forth, have your own business as well. How do you consume your news?
How do I consume my news? I mostly do it through, actually I read. I read blogs. I'm an uncommon one amongst my generation, so I don't think I'm the right person to be asking this.
You are the right person.
But many of my friends consume it directly from social media, Instagram, as it's it's commonly like once you start looking on social media, it shows you things that you agree with, things that you want to see. So you continue to read from there and you get your perspective from one side for the most part, which I would see most things would come from, most problems might come from. But I do definitely see the value of getting your news from more than one source and question that, how can we do this? And I see that a news desert is such a detrimental thing to democracy, as it may only show that like the world is only one way when your town is very much a different way. And we need to look a little bit more locally.
And I want to stick up for the young people too. I mean, as someone who's a former magazine editor, all of my magazines are defunct now. There's, why go into a field where you're not going to be able to find a job? So I love the tactile print. I wish we all had newspapers and magazines and all of that, but they are slowly dying out. So I'm glad to see it being revived.
If I could just say,
Please.
I want to just mention that at the start of this project, it came about in the beginning of the pandemic. And I reached out to Martin. As you mentioned, we've had a lot of engagement over years.
Right.
And I said, look, we want to go online and we're shut because of the pandemic. We don't have the skill sets to do media that's going to be online. Have you got any media students that could come in and help? And then we kind of took these various interns they're not just from San Diego State, but Point Loma Nazarene, and I think we had someone from City College. I mean, it was a variety of people.
Place,
So it was all these quote-unquote kids who really mucked in at the beginning of this project when we were meeting with Penny Abernathy, we were meeting with Stony Brook University, which does a media program. We did all these Zoom meetings with all these student interns taking part and putting their input in. So there was a lot of input from the generation that you're talking about went into the inception of this project, and they had quite a big influence on how it's come out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a little bit of a sidebar here. I was watching yesterday's debate.
Me too.
Yeah, but it was interesting. One of a person I was watching, she just is your age, and she had just graduated from UCSD, and she's actually sort of a scientist who works in a lab that's focused on climate change and all that business. And she's obviously always mortified when someone says there's no such thing as climate change. She was showing me some graphs about it. But I was asking her, well, how engaged are you in this? It happened to be in the debate in this, and she goes, pretty doggone engaged. I want to sit there, and I'm she's certainly well versed in being able to look at truth and fiction and all that aspect. So that's sort of encouraging. Maybe she's the exception. Maybe Brandon's the exception on it. But there's no question, Shaun, as you're saying, the whole world is in this precarious place of democracy and so forth, especially our country that was founded on it. And nothing more critical than getting this information out in this area. What can our listeners do to help support what you're doing? I'll start with you on that, Shaun.
We are trying to get this project to the next level, and we will be working again with journalism students. So that's an input that we're looking for. We're going to leverage contacts in that field to do the grunt work, as it were, to get this real. Like any nonprofit, I hate to be a bore, but it comes down to you need some funding at some point.
100%.
Absolutely.
We have to pay our web guy, who's basically everyone's doing everything pro bono.
Yeah.
I have another job. Martin has another job. We really believe in this project. We really do. Like I said, we're not getting paid for it. We do it because we're passionate, and we really feel like you have to have an informed electorate. Yeah. And and it's something that a lot of people who we've spoken to about feel the same way. So I think, there's the belief there, and we'd like to rally people to support it.
Yeah, Kristen, you're in this field, worked in magazines, you have a writing company and all that business. How important is what Shaun and Martin are talking about to keep this going and actually to enhance it when it comes to democracy?
It's extremely important. And I remember I was in the RWS department at State. So I remember us talking about news deserts way back then. And and just thinking like, how in this day and age, how can people not access information? Actually, I have a follow-up comment, clarifying question, if you will. Is the news desert that's in San Diego County, is that Julian? Did I read that somewhere, or am I completely off?
So I would say that when you map the news deserts across America, California is not the most desert-like state.
Sure.
It's pretty well served. So we're looking more at grayer areas when we're looking at California, as opposed to, Martin mentioned, southern Utah, for instance, or, middle of Kansas. So this is one of the grayer areas where, again, it's back to the days when the Union Tribune had, hundreds of reporters, and they covered the outlying areas better than they do now. So technically it's within the UT catchment area, but I don't think they get very much coverage. And, it has a kind of one of these ghost media things that comes out of Ramona, where it's just kind of an advertising thing, and there's no news in it. So we felt it was okay to go there, because one thing that I just want to say is we are respectful of local journalists. And one thing we don't want to do is go in someplace where someone's struggling to keep their thing going, and hey, we've got this free service, we put them out of business, because that's the opposite of what we're trying to do. So, we've been very mindful of that piece. But yes, Julian is a place that we're looking at. I've spoken to the San Diego County Library Director, who is in charge of that library there. We know that it had a paper that it closed, and we've spoken to people in the community, and it's something we're looking at.
All this to say, I think that that's one of the things that the listeners can think about is some of these news deserts, or, ghost media, I'm sure I got that wrong, are, relatively near you. So if you don't have a connection to Kansas or Utah or what have you, you do have a connection to your local county. So, I think folks can really grab onto that and feel the impact of that.
Yeah, actually, I'm also partnering with iNewsSource.
I know them, yeah.
To do a project. It's a national nonprofit called The Documenters, and it came out of Chicago. And what they do is there's grant funding to pay ordinary members of the public. Again, same thing. They come to the Coronado Library, they get trained. We've trained our staff to be the trainers. And then they're going out and they're covering public meetings in the South Bay that aren't getting covered because there aren't the people to do it. And then they post the stories where any media, not just iNewsSource, they just happen to be a partner, can access these stories. So, your school board meetings, your little town council meetings, to provide coverage. And that's a very different project from Factly, because Factly is about a news desert where there isn't a media organization sitting there waiting to lap up these stories. Yeah. But it's related. And it's something that people locally can get involved with.
Yeah, and to me, I think the whole key to all of this is, do people really want to embrace the truth and facts? Do they care about it? For folks like me and you, Martin, and obviously Shaun, and of course, Kristen, and I know Brandon, having worked with him, and certainly my business partner, Charles Parisi. Yes, this is important. This is very, very important. And we need to make sure that, what is being said, what is being posted, is that true? And the scariest part about it is when you hear people say, well, they all lie, and, so what? No big deal. I mean, that is beyond dangerous. It's a huge deal, in this area. So I'm as interested about getting more people to realize how important this is in, covering this stuff, certainly executing it as well. How do people get a hold of you? Is there a website that people can make some donations?
It's Factly News, which is actually stands for something. Facts, Accountability, the Library, and You. Factlynews.org, and people can reach me or as well if they want to talk about it. And I'm going back to what you just said, actually, Drew. This cynicism about is there a truth and so on. That's why one of the powers of this project, and we've really looked into what is being done and the grants and who's doing what. And this is truly a unique project. Nobody else is trying to do, something that could encompass any library anywhere and build a real network. It leverages the trust piece. That's what libraries bring. There's poll after poll. I mean, Pew did something that said, they had had the media at a certain point, they had politicians at a certain point, and way above all of those were libraries. People really do trust it. Yeah. And so the project is geared to not just try and be a regular newspaper in a library, but to be its own thing, where you're just dealing with, the fact or fiction and the watchdog piece as you would at a reference desk in a library. And really aiming, and I know it seems like an impossible cause, but to try to be neutral and just stick to detail.
Well, and I think that's so important there. I think there's only one other group that is probably lower than people think about the media, and that is Congress. I'm not sure if there's a depth for that one, but and there's some very hardworking people in Congress, to say the least, on this. But I think that's encouraging to hear on this, and this is why I'm just so laser beamed on what's going on and the students that Martin has at San Diego State, and of course Brandon Joe at UCSD, and the folks that come through the San Diego Writers Inc. This stuff is still important. Matter of fact, it is very critical for us if we want to continue to be a society that's focused on democracy. Any final comments, Shaun?
Well, we're talking about an era where people are doing their own posting, their own research, and so on. And what is the library? It is a place that's always about your self-discovery, what you want to learn, and not following someone's curriculum or someone's agenda, but you go in and you figure it out for yourself. So we are trying to empower people to be educated to do this work properly. As best we can.
I think it's so critical. Martin, any comments?
Just that this is an intergenerational project, and we would welcome people as young as elementary school up to retired people who are looking for something to do. And this is very important.
Yeah, I think it's critical. Kristen?
Nothing, just thanks for the good work you do, and I look forward to learning more about it.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely so spot on, and I'm a little prejudiced because of the background but I think what you guys are doing is terrific. We can't talk about it enough. Yeah. We can't query people enough in this area, and we're going to look forward to having you folks maybe check back in a few months, see how things are going and what type of traction is being made.
Many thanks.
Right. Thank you.
You bet. We've been chatting with Shaun Briley. He is the co-founder of Faculty News and the Coronado Library director, joined by his colleague Martin Kruming, lecturer at SDSU, Journalism and Media Studies, former Daily Transcript editor, law, media guy. I'm Drew Schlosberg, as you've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast, now in our 18th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union for 6 decades, just doing great things. People living in San Diego County, as always, thank you, Kristen Fogel, Executive Director of San Diego Writers, Inc. We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.